Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jake Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iminds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you. Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iminds. Welcome to the show. Ray of sunshine you are. Gone.
Thank you. Gone. I got a new battery and everything, but I don't know, this little camera doesn't like me. Well, I could definitely go on a tangent about studying the menstrual cycle. I'm a bit jet lagged. I literally got off the plane, so many hours ago, so you have to forgive me. So it might be a quieter tangent, or it could really go, but that's something I want to get into.
Well, let's start it off. There's an article out there that talks about menstruation and depression, and I think you're more of an expert on that, Dr. Marie, than Jay or I. But get into the articles and educate us.
Well, I don't claim to be an expert, but I would say as a
female
psychologist. Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to go by expert, I would know a little something about this. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I'm not going to apologize. I mean, I'm happy on the one hand and I'm saddened on the other. There has been a dearth of any type of studies as they relate to females, period. And I'm not even talking about the things that very specifically make us female, but females, just generally speaking, sample groups, they were not, we can just go on and on. The majority of individuals in studies were university-age males, because these are the people that they could recruit. And they did not include females because they did not understand or did not care to understand the influence of the hormonal cycle on pharmaceutical trials. So, yay, they're studying it. But I think there's something really, really nefarious behind this. And I'm going to go up a sidetrack a little bit here in terms of when we celebrate something positive. Sometimes we have to be really, really careful about the outcome. And with everything that's going on in the youth, of all the times.
Don't even notice. Just keep going.
Yeah, no, of all the times for this to be happening, just look at what's happening in terms of the absolute erasure of female healthcare in use, and everybody is talking about the right to abortion. Just first of all, I call that forced pregnancy. That's very, very different. I would love it if we would change the term. We're talking about forced pregnancy. We're not. So please, anybody who wants to take up that term, please take it up. But we're talking about the centers that provide abortion, provide many, many other services. So if people want to have a debate about abortion or forced pregnancy, please have it. But they've lumped in all of the other services. So when these centers close, females don't have female-specific healthcare. So that's number one. And where I was going with this is way back in Italy, when they started to look at female rights in terms of employment. One of the things they did that was celebrated, it was beautiful, is they established paid maternity leave. But what they did is made it the responsibility of the employer, not the state. Don't have to be a genius to see what happened. Young females became non-employable. Okay, because if a female got pregnant, you'd see a 23-year-old female, oh, she's going to be pregnant within the next year. She's going to cost me 3 months of pre-birth care and 9 months or whatever it was, a year or 6 months salary. So it became a huge prejudicial issue. So when we celebrate these positives, everybody knows menstruation is not fun, okay? But if we look at it as a medical illness, the stigma and the negatives that are potentially going to come to that could be really horrendous. I mean, all of us females have had experience of just, pardon my language, don't pardon my language, asshole men commenting when you're a little orny or you're bitchy. Okay, which I say bitch is power. So when you talk back to a guy, oh, you're on the period, or oh, you're on the rag, and men abuse this all the time. I don't mind. I'm in my late 50s. I've had a lot of experience with assholes, and just we really, really have to be careful about how this is potentially going to be used against women. The other is, as I'm going to repeat, we're studying the negatives. If you are going to study the menstrual cycle, by God, you better study ovulation, okay? Because ovulation is the power cycle, okay? And any woman who is not on birth control, as in the pill, knows the power of her ovulation, okay? There's extreme energy and confidence. It's what, if you want to say the menstruation is a down, then ovulation is the extreme up. But many women don't even know this because they're on the pill. Okay. And more women are going to get on the pill in the US because they're terrified of potential forced pregnancy. So a lot of, I think you can see how this all is coming together. My last little thing on the rant, and then I'll open up the floor to the gentleman, is look at, if you're going to really study menstruation, look at cultures and communities that don't have the problems, or majority of the problems, that a lot of Western women have. Okay, we have horrendous nutrition here. Okay, this is the time, literally the time of the month when the body is, yes, purging a lot, but is collecting all kinds of energy to rebuild the lining of the uterus. Okay, we need iron. Okay, we're also going to be cramping. If you're low in magnesium, your cramps are going to be triple. But what are most young females doing? They're starving themselves to, essentially abide by this cultural image of skinny mini. If you do not eat well, you're going to have a horrible period. If you do not have good nutrition, you are going to have a horrible period. Now, I do not want to dismiss those women who really, really are suffering. Okay, just like I wouldn't dismiss men who are really just, suffering with some kind of ejaculation disorder or penile disorder. It exists, okay? But to lump every female in that category, and to not study the cultural contributors of nutrition, starvation, it's just wrong. I said that was the last part. I'm going to go even further. The westernization, the absolute misogynistic takeover of males studying the female system. Okay, we have lost literally centuries of women's wisdom, right? And there was a massive, massive erasure of women's wisdom passed on from generation to generation. Everybody knows about the witch trials, et cetera, et cetera. But any female who had any medicinal knowledge, which at that point would have been herbs and nutrition, okay, was, killed, tortured, imprisoned. Okay, so all of this went underground. All right. Anyways, I could go on and on and on. I would love maybe to invite some other women on to chat about this, but it's when I see this, part of me goes, yes, and the other part of me is like, why the hell are you studying females and menstruation as if being female is an illness and having menstruation is a mental illness? So gentlemen, pop on in. I think I've said a lot.
I have full empathy with hormonal fluctuations. Having no pituitary, my hormonal stuff is just out of control, and it's what I consume. So uh, I've, I've seen um, the effect on mood that meds can have, and um, I have hot flashes myself. So, as I say, full empathy for the process and the sensations. Um, and there's not much guys can say without stepping on the minefield of the topic,
Yeah.
and having it take out a leg or some other part of the anatomy. So I, I don't want
If I
to.
can interrupt you, Jay, I want to talk about taking out a part of the anatomy. I really want to loop back to what you said, but you had a pituitary removed. Okay, so you really are dealing with a quote unquote medical condition. But just things like hot flashes. I am not a gynecologist. I am not a specialist in this, but even many gynecologists aren't. But if you look in many parts of Asia, women going through menopause do not have the tough time that North American women do. Okay, they do not get the hot flashes. That's what we need to be studying. There's a lot of talk about soya. There's a lot of talk about the diet. There's a lot of talk, actually, even about the containers and how we cook our food and how we process our food, the amount of estrogen in the plastics, okay, the type of estrogen that's in the plastics. So,
Well, the
yeah,
question,
no, I think you,
I
yeah.
think
And
this is something we have not talked about before, so this intrigues me.
Yeah.
One, look, it's a physical thing. It's, a time period thing. Is there
Yeah.
anything what's going on mentally? And is there anything that neurofeedback can do to help that? And then second, if you could continue
Yeah.
after that, is the menopause, because you get,
Yeah.
you get pretty fired up and being a
Yeah,
husband,
I mean,
being on the
the
recipient
joy of
end.
womanhood, you have like 40, 45 years of periods and then you get menopause. Woohoo! Yeah. Um, yeah, so uh sorry, can you go back to the first? This is the jet lag kicking. What's the first part of the
No, it's
question?
on okay, you're on your period. Okay, mentally, is there what's going on
Oh, right,
mentally
yeah.
and not physically?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, one of
physically,
the things
obviously you're in pain. You
Mhm,
can't do anything about pain, or maybe you can, I don't know. But
mhm.
mentally, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are different levels and they kind of go together. Like I've just kind of said, magnesium. If your body doesn't have enough magnesium, you're going to have more cramps. A man who doesn't have enough magnesium will get Charlie horses. A woman will get Charlie horses and menstrual cramps, right? you know, um, so these are some of the things that, again, I am not a certified nutritionist. I am not a gynecologist, but there's so much out there, women. Just look it up. Maybe not on YouTube, but look it up. Um, yeah, mentally, again, if we look, I'm going to compare men and women. So men cycle daily. Okay, we can talk about the arousal template. We can talk about the physical sexual arousal template. Most men get either small or large erections early in the morning. Okay, so your hormonal cycle is on the 24-hour clock. Okay, women's is lunar. It's not daily. It's not by the sun and the moon. It's by the total of them. Okay, we're very, very biological beings in that regard. Now, one of the things I tell women, and there is an increased sensitivity around menses, okay, but it doesn't have to be negative. Okay, I tell women to treat it like a barometer. Okay, if something starts to bug you right before your menses, something really starts to irritate you before your menses, note it. Really note it. Okay. Think about it. Okay. And press the pause button. So if something like your partner's leaving his socks on the floor, or you think he's cheating, or your boss is this or whatnot, just note it and pause it. If it's still bothering you after your menses, deal with it. Okay. I very, very strongly believe, and I'm not the only one, that the premenstrual structure, I don't want to get woo-woo here. This is biological. There's an increased sensitivity. There's an increased awareness. Okay. Listen to it, but don't over listen to it. Okay. I'm going to use an example again with males and females. Everybody knows the term being hangry. Hungry, therefore angry. Okay, we accept this all the time on males. We go, "Oh, darling, would you like a sandwich? You seem a little bit angry." Okay, Same thing with females. Okay. Oh, darling, you seem a little bit upset. Can I give you some chocolate and a glass of red wine? Okay. Um, but I'm digressing, but not so much. That the key thing is, and most men will comment that some of the biggest arguments they have in their relationships are right before the menses. Okay, so it does make sense to be a little bit more sensitive, but females also to do the counterpart and to realize your barometer is really high, really high. Okay, and it can be telling you something. So it's not a negative. It's 100% not a negative if you know about it and you listen to your body. Depression.
Jay, I got my thinking cap on. Okay, you brought up you
Geez,
brought
does it help? Maybe I should get one.
I need two. I need to put. But you brought up something because you remember I'm the video editor of the show. Okay, over glorified. But what is going on in the brain when you notice something like on pain, right? And then it magnifies what it is once you notice it more. Could you talk to that and how that could play
Sure.
a role into this?
um, there's networks within the brain that end up being at rest, the default mode of resting state network. There's a salience network when something catches your attention. And when the salience network is turned on, the resting state network is turned off and the central executive network is turned on. So when something catches your attention, the anterior cingulate focuses your attention and turns on again the ability to figure out what is it, where is it, what is the thing that caught my attention. Now, one of the things that happens when your cingulate locks onto something is that it can magnify a sensation. If I pay attention to the sensation of my hand, the area associated with my right hand is approximately the C3 location left centrally. And that area, if I'm paying attention to my hand, will light up with electronegativity, amplifying the sensation in my hand. So, attention is the intention to perceive. And if I attend to pain, I amplify that pain. Now, in pain medicine, there's a dysrhythmia in the somatosensory cortex, but there's also a dysrhythmia at the anterior cingulate, which they refer to as the distress network. Now, it's the same network as the salience network. It's not a different network, but in pain, when there is distress, there's nothing more salient than distress. So it's the distress network, but it focuses you on the pain and then amplifies it. So the anterior cingulate can sometimes be turned down with neuromodulation, so that although you have pain because you've got something that was damaged or injured, so you have some chronic pain from it, but you can quit having the distress and cut down on the magnification of it, so the pain doesn't bother you. You still have a sensation, but it's not distressing, and that changes the kind of the interaction with the pain. It's not something that hijacks your attention. It falls into the background without the focus. It becomes less and less salient as a feature. Um, you can see this hand. You see, it's a little bit gnarly. I cut those four fingers off once and had them put back on, and that's my good hand. I learned how not to feel that hand by not attending to it early on, because in North Dakota at minus 40 degrees, fingers that have just been put back on don't feel so good. Circulation's not all that great yet, and cold, severed fingers are quite painful. So I had to learn how to uh, turn off the pain, and it works real well. That's my good hand. Uh, my other hand, I have the wrist has had 6 surgeries, and it's much worse. But I've got all parts of me that are damaged. Most of me doesn't work, and so uh, I've learned to ignore those painful sources. They don't distress me at all. They wanted to fuse my left wrist after the last surgery, and I told them no. They could, do the surgery, but they couldn't fuse it. They said, "Well, it's going to hurt too much. It's all bone on bone." I said, "Yeah, pain's not my problem. So I want the mobility." So anyway, yeah,
So,
I've learned to turn off or turn down or ignore basically those. I don't attend to that stuff. And having learned that has been very helpful for my chronic pain because I don't have any distress from my chronic pain. There's no overfocus. There's no amplification.
Jay,
oh,
let's have some fun here. And Pete too, with your permission. Given that I'm starting to be really annoyed about the studying the negative, but why don't we do a call out here? Okay, if anybody who wants to really kind of get real and have a look at what neuro can do for this. So you were saying if you train at C3, what would you specifically train at C3, do you think, to help with pain and cramping?
In fact, pain and cramping wouldn't necessarily be something on the simple somatosensory strip, where on the homunculus is your uterus.
Mhm.
It's a smooth muscle, not represented in the striate muscle of the homunculus.
Mhm.
If you tuck into the sylvian fissure, you'll encounter the posterior aspect of the insula, where interoception, internal sensations exist. And if there's a discharge there, you can have a smooth muscle contraction and spasm. So all of the smooth muscle peristalsis is operated from there. All of that. So it's deeply embedded, not simply something on the surface. Somebody asked me one
Hence my
time, well,
talking about magnesium before.
yeah. How can I stick in which electrode site is over top of the insula? Well, the insula is buried
Let's
down
drill some
in.
holes in women's heads.
You have to triangulate at it. You can't stick an electrode above it because it doesn't shoot something straight out. It shoots laterally. It might be underneath C3, but it's shooting back and forth, not out at C3. So there's no radial current source density. So it's invisible to C3. It's being picked up on both sides, but it's a subtle finding on both sides, but it's out of phase. So CZ to the temporal gets you triangulated on it, and the lateral projection is in one phase going out and the other phase at the other side. So CZ and old T3 but new T7 are out of phase, and they pick up the insula with that montage. So it's possible to feedback content from the insula. In fact, we do that quite commonly when there's insular involvement. And the posterior insula is going to be the viscera and internal sensations, but the anterior insula is sympathetic parasympathetic balance. And some people say it's parasympathetic on the left and sympathetic on the right, but it's a balance, and the balance can be interrupted over function or under function on either of the two sides. So it's a little bit more complicated than just one is one and the other is the other. But the sympathetic parasympathetic balance, dissociation, personality disorders, hallucinations. The insula is really quite adept at lots of things. The insula on the right side is part of your emergency gating or emergency stop mechanism. If you have a go no go stop task, which is an event related potential task, you get a go signal and you start to respond, and then you get a stop sign that pops up. And the amygdala on the right, the anterior insula on the right, and the overlying cortex, the operculum, F8 area, basically, that area lights up to stop the ongoing activity. Well, that's the area that gates impulses and emotions. And so the anterior insula on the right side can be disturbed in disinhibition or excessive inhibition. So over or underactive, basically, as a gating mechanism. So the insula are very, very complicated, and they're deep, and they're not easy to get at, but you can get at them. You've got to, find the discharge, if there's a discharge coming from them, to target it.
Well, if I had $1 million research budget, you know what I'd do.
So if somebody says, "Oh, I have cramps and all this," and a guy says, "Hey, go do neurofeedback," is the woman going to punch him in the face, or is it going to help him out?
As always, it's the way he says it, right?
Guy-
Right? Come on.
Guys always want to fix things. That's the problem, right? And
Well, I think you probably heard when I was saying before, if you're offer your woman a glass of red wine and some chocolate when she's having a bad period, you're going to get much better reception.
Yeah.
But the 19 channel, I give her the 19 channel, I get a better reception. Boop.
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things I'm rather curious as well about is, we've talked about this before, is with passing through the life cycle and with maturity, high beta on females go up. We don't quite understand why. But I'm kind of wondering in terms of what that region is doing in menses as well, right? Or for that matter, in ovulation.
Yeah.
As I said, we're talking again about the negative, but in terms of, I'm dying to study ovulation. I really am.
Well, there's now databases that have segregated male and female in EEG, and the Korean did that first. And based on my suggestion that they keep it separate, and it made for twice as much work. They had to gather two totally separate databases. You can't cut 1,000-person database into two 500s and have one that works. So they worked and worked and worked to get this. But once they got it, they've noticed that they aren't the same. And combining males and females into some unique database isn't the right way to go. And one of the rather obvious different things that happen when you look at it is at about age 40, 45 on up, females end up with more beta and gamma in the EEG, and males go kind of electrocerebrally silent for the fast frequencies. So that a rather dramatic change in the level of cortical beta and gamma in women, again, 45 years old on up. So and that, if you've got a lot of gamma in women and not much gamma in men, and you average that and you're compared to it, what the hell? I mean, the man's going to be under performing, and the woman is going to be overperforming in the amount of gamma if you average them and compare them to the average. So it's not good to have combined male and female norms, and it's not easy to get separated male and female norms because you have to collect more data. You can't just separate the data you have and still have a valid set of norms. So
I love your term there, Jay, the unique database.
Well, well, what is it? I mean, it's a combined male and female, and that's as close a term as I could come. So, so the other area where there's differences in, and if you hung out with kids through a preschool, males and females have macrofacial surges at different ages. And if you're looking at the EEG during the developmental trajectory, males and females have surges of EEG components that are different. And you're going to end up having again an increased variability to the unique use of the combined data, where you have specific age and sex appropriate norms during that developmental trajectory and now they've got norms from age 4 on up to age 90. So it covers the developmental early trajectory as well as they're doing very, very nice work now looking in aging and dementia. And aging and dementia are a bit different, male and female.
Before we go into dementia and the older ones, I want to scream a little bit at the educational system now. No, I screamed at genderism. But one of the things that I don't know whether we'd known for a while, but it's a gross irritant in terms of, and I suffered from this as well, that young females in high school not being considered good at math. Okay. And I got my revenge. I did rather well in PhD level statistics, but in high school I was not having a lot of fun, and was not given any attention because I was female. And one of the things in Western school systems, when do we start to really teach math? When do we bring out chemistry and all the hard stuff? Gentlemen or boys, can you guess? Well, Jay, I mean, you know the answer. You're probably just being polite, not jumping in. It's during a very key change where females are in a key developmental state. All the hormones are kicking in, and the boys are still puppies, right? So essentially, that's not the right age to introduce the really tough stuff for females. Now, if you look in Asia, where they start the more difficult math younger, you do not get a differentiation between males and females because the brain is being prepped for a lot of the concepts that when it gets tougher, on you go. Jay, do you have any more comments on that? In terms of,
I have to say that STEM isn't something that has had a general steering of females into science, technology, engineering, and math course development. It's not as bad as it was. There used to be home ec and develop, and business. I mean, there wasn't any similarity in the options that were offered. At least at this point, most schools and so forth are opening up the STEM coursework to both males and females, and there are schools that have been sued for not treating people towards college prep and kind of steering some people towards other non-college and without appropriately offering the option for courses that would get you into college. So
apart from that, though, Jay, I was kind of chatting about, though, in terms of the potential difference of male and female brains. Now, please, nobody take this out of context. This is where I hate short clips, but we all know that males have difficulty with the language arts when they're younger, and females excel. Okay, but there is an argument that females, if math was taught a little bit earlier, that they would be more successful than when the complex math is taught right when all the hormonal surges are occurring on females. That we adapt the school system understanding more the difficulties that our males are having. But for females, we say, oh, it's because she's a girl, not recognizing that we have a mismatch in terms of the processing and the learning process. Any insight there?
You know, I think you've got more insight into the impact on women and their educational surges and things than I will ever have. But uh,
Are you
I
saying I
do.
know it all?
No, but you know more about that than I do. That's for sure. You know, if there was a question about pituitary function, I guess they would probably offer it to me, not you. You know, so uh, yeah. But and I know more about pituitary dysfunction than I know about function in some respects. So
So the hot flashes can.
hot flashes are absolutely wild. I've been hit with them in the middle of a lecture, and people will see I've just turned beet red and I'm sweaty, and I stop what I'm saying because it just hijacks everything. It literally stops me. And I'm not easy to stop if I'm talking, as you might notice. So Pete says, "Yeah, yeah." So, but I come to a stop. I have to ask, what the hell was I talking about? You know, it wholly totally hijacks everything at that moment, and you can imagine, you know, the system's sympathetic overflow for the perspiration and the vascular changes and so forth. So there, you know, the massive hormonal shifts going on in neurological function or dysfunction. So yeah, as I say, I have full empathy for all of the hot, flashy changes that end up being seen in menopause, because I have
Yeah.
them too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's give men some hot flashes. The other one that's very, very difficult for females is insomnia. And I think that would be something to really, really look into in terms of specific phases of insomnia, perimenopause, and menopause as well. This is one of those things where, again, if anybody has any more knowledge, we should invite them on. But you know,
Yeah.
we really help women with the neuro to help to you know, reduce stress tolerance, reduce anxiety. So essentially, we kind of circle around the issue, help them with all other types of things to improve the sleep, to quiet the body in general, and that's how we affect it. But in terms of the role of the hormone surges, I don't think we understand it enough.
Yeah.
Well, mentally, what's going on? You're hot, right? You're hot. You're hijacked,
No,
and
it's a little bit more than that, Jay. It's
Hyperexcitable cortex. I mean, sensitivities, sensitivity, irritability, kind of as some sort of a dimension that are interacting. Um, and I know all about that. So
it's more like a, you know, for the men out there or the younger women, it's more like a heat rush, if that makes any sense. If you know, for individuals who uh, recall the um the first cigarette they had, that rush of nicotine that kind of goes through the body. I'm trying to think of other things. It's just, or sometimes fear, you can get this rush that goes through the body. It's very, very hard to describe. Yeah. It's not just feeling.
but is that the same thing with pain? Like, can neurofeedback help? I know hormones are hormones, but I'm trying to get every last dollar I can out of that 19 channel amplifier. You know, can this help a woman with these
Well, it can
problems?
help with homeostasis. And I think that's it. It can help with generalized quieting and homeostasis. You know, let's throw in the brain fog that some women get as well, right? You know, really,
yeah,
really helping training the God alpha, right? Really, really training the low high alpha, helping with sharpness and with quieting. I would say, but we don't have it. We don't understand it yet. As I said, we're circling all around, and it is helping, but we have to acknowledge that we're circling around it. You know, we're dealing with everything else that helps with generalized homeostasis, and therefore we're having positive effect. But we do not have the target yet.
Anything else? I think this is a great show. I mean, this is never done this topic before, and I'm sure it'll be pretty popular, as all of her shows are popular. Is there?
Well,
Can we?
it's a really important one. It's a really important one. Yeah. And I encourage, you know, all female researchers, and here I'm going to be generous because, you know, great. Thank you, men, for studying women. But I think we need, you know, some at least males and females studying together. We need more females in this pot.
Help me make
And
this
my
clip here.
concern
What is
here-
the difference between the female brain and the male brain, Jay?
Dramatic. It is, you have to speak in averages because there's individuality. But on the average, the male brain is a slight bit larger. So we all swell with pride, you know. And our left hemisphere is slightly larger than the right hemisphere, and they're more balanced on females. So we have a larger left hemisphere. Again, swell with pride, swell with pride. But you know, the corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres, the females have a massively well-developed corpus callosum, and the connectivity between hemispheres is very well developed. The males have a spindly little thing. We should have callosal envy. You know, the connectivity between hemispheres obviously changes metrics within the EEG that look at connectivity. And if you average spindly little thing with well-developed corpus callosum, what do you get? Not something you necessarily want to be compared to. You know, so again, the necessity to separate male and female was obvious from structure, much less function. And you know, the Koreans showed that there was a significant difference, and at that point the Swiss-Russian database collected more subjects, and they split their database male female as well. So you can now get sex specific norms, which is a step up, you know, from again, eunuch averaging of a 45, 50-year-old female with lots of gamma and a male with almost none. Well, the average is some, and you know that average isn't something you want to be compared to. You want to be compared to your own normative group. And so there's
If I could jump in.
please.
Yeah, no, I just also wanted to say, you know, it's very, very generally here. I think most people can agree that females, generally speaking, look at bigger picture naturally, much more naturally than males. And then, you know, what you're talking about structure really, really explains that, I guess. But the other thing I wanted all of us to be very, very cautious about is, sure, we have what we're born with, but it's also how we train what we're born with. And we literally, again, have centuries of repression of the development of females' intelligence. All right. An example, do I do a shameless plug for my book here there, Pete? But no, it's something that I kind of talked about a little bit in the book because of geolocation skills. There's this big promotion in terms of if you play, if you game, et cetera, your spatial planning and geolocation skills will improve. Well, if we look at, you know, looking at the male brain and the female brain, looking at our judgment, we always say that females don't have good spatial planning. I would argue very, very strongly that this is training. We're not dealing with ability. And the example I use all the time is, well, first of all, the generalized question. In most households, still in 2024, if you have a male and a female running out the car to drive, who drives? The male. So the male has tons and tons of more driving time. He's not a superior driver because he's naturally superior. He's superior because he has more clock time behind the wheel. Okay. Geolocation skills. You'll find very, very frequently when a male and a female drive together, same route every single day, or every, the summer vacation they take every year. Good old dad drives. Okay. And the 1 year they've been doing this 10 years, the 1 year that he can't go on vacation, mom drives. Mom gets in the car like, where am I going? And we laugh and say that mom has no geolocation. She has no spatial planning. I would argue mom's brain is really, really intelligent. She has never, ever needed to pay attention because she was chauffeured. She was looking at the red barn, and she was looking at the trees, and she was looking at the sunflower. She was not paying attention to the road. Okay. And even if she was kind of paying attention, her brain was pruning that information because it was absolutely unnecessary, because she was always being chauffeured. So that's a little point in terms of training. I'm going to hop to the other side because Jay was talking about shop work versus home ec. In the household, who always knows where the husband's socks are, or where the keys are, or the glasses are? It's always the woman. So it's the same situation, but it's reversed. The female in the domestic space, okay, knows where all the things are, and males are hopeless with visual memory within the home. I argue again that this is completely trained. Okay, so I would say if you dissect those brains, or if you look at those brains, and I don't know, anywhere from 45 to 65-year-old people, you're going to find the effects of the training, not the effects of the birth anatomy. Jay?
I'm sure that a brain that you're born with ends up being just a malleable, formable structure. Our function sculpts our structure. And it's quite often that people thought that the structure limited our function. But I've seen diffusion tensor imaging white matter MRI structure on autistics that did neurofeedback. And the white matter is sculpted by the function that they've learned. So the aberrant white matter developmental problem ends up being remediated not by the anatomy, but by the function and physiology. And, structure doesn't determine function. It sometimes limits it a bit if you've got really bad structure, but we sculpt what we have. Muriel Beauregard at Montreal Neurological talked about neurofeedback changing white matter and gray matter, and he had a couple of studies that showed that. And I still hadn't really grasped that, but when I saw the DTI images in San Diego, Dr. Pineda's study with the autistic kids, it's striking. It's hard to deny when you've trained in an area and you see the white matter dramatically altered in that area, that the training end up being the intervention. You don't expect white matter to shift. It's your wiring. I mean, it's not gray matter that's malleable, but it's still neuroplastic. And everybody agreed that gray matter was plastic, but white matter's got neuroplasticity too. And so we sculpt our structure with our function.
Yeah, I really wonder if we, if we take, we talk about reliability and validity of studies, et cetera. When you take a brain that's been trained, by the way we use it, by its function for so long, how many difference are you really going to find in brains over time? Yeah, let's map a couple of little 6-month-year-olds versus 60-something-year-olds. Yeah, and see how we train the brain through life. But there you go again in terms of your neural, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to
It's-
train in your little boys and your little girls, right?
we we end up seeing in adult brains that have had developmental trauma that the trauma tends to encode in the frequencies that are available at the time. And
Yes,
quite
yes.
often, the slower frequencies of the delta and theta range are available at age 1, 2, 3, where you don't even have alpha. And
Yeah.
as an adult, you you know that there's unconscious, preconscious material there, but you can't put it into your adult awareness fully. It's somewhat shielded from you. But the alpha theta training, you hold your adult awareness alpha and you bring up the unconscious, preconscious theta material, and you have it available for your adult conscious awareness. So you can actually now perceive it and deal with it in a way that you couldn't when it was still unconscious. So the the ability to actually dive down into your past and bring it up into a present awareness, so that whatever was going on that was traumatic can end up being dealt with. And you never know. I mean, the parents may not have any idea what was traumatizing. I mean, traumatizing is from the perception of the individual, not necessarily from an objective outside perception.
Dr. Marie Swingle, Jay Gunkelman. Another fantastic episode of the NeuroNoodle Network podcast. Take care. I'll have a great weekend.
Great to see everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Great to be
Bye,
seen.
fellas.
Bye, guys. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.